The galaxy had always been proud of its own civilizations. Mighty empires spanned dozens of star systems. Alien species had built cities on gas giants, mined the cores of dead planets, and mastered technologies that humans could barely imagine. Yet for all their power, none had understood the subtle influence of humanity. Humans were relatively small in number compared to the massive alien populations, and their ships were often slower than the advanced warp drives of other species. Their weapons were not the most destructive, and their colonies rarely boasted the grandeur of alien megacities. But humans had something the galaxy had long underestimated: adaptability, creativity, and an unwavering courage that showed itself in ways no alien race could easily measure. Captain Alex Reynolds looked out of the viewport of the starship Aurora, watching the endless stretch of stars. His mission was simple: help the Galactic Council mediate a dispute over mining rights on a distant asteroid belt. Yet he could feel the tension in the council chambers. The alien delegates often dismissed humans as minor players. Some didn't even attend the council meetings, preferring to communicate through subordinates. Alex sighed. It was not the first time humans were ignored. Yet time and again, humans had solved problems that no alien force could. From rescuing stranded colonies in volatile systems to stopping wars between rival empires, humanity's presence had quietly held the galaxy together. Most aliens never paused to consider what would happen if humans simply walked away. And now perhaps it was about to happen. A strange signal rippled across human networks. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the galaxy's monitoring systems. Yet for humans it carried a profound message. It was time to leave. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in silence. Humanity had given all they could. They had tried to coexist, to help, to stabilize, and yet the galaxy had never truly appreciated them. On Earth, in the human colonies, there were no protests or debates. Citizens simply began to prepare. Communication with alien partners was gently withdrawn. Starships stopped patrolling sectors that humans had overseen for generations. Terraforming stations went into standby. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, humans began to vanish from the galactic network. At first, alien leaders hardly noticed. "They will return soon," one ambassador said dismissively. Humans always return. But as weeks passed, confusion spread. Trade routes humans had maintained grew chaotic. Systems that humans had stabilized started showing signs of decline. Minor disputes escalated into conflicts. Rogue fleets moved into unmonitored regions. Slowly, the galaxy realized that humans were not just participants. They were the quiet architects of order. Captain Alex and his crew did not celebrate this. They were not leaving out of revenge or pride. They were leaving to remind the galaxy of a simple truth: humans had always been undervalued. By stepping away, they let the consequences speak for themselves. The Aurora arrived at a small remote human colony on the edge of the galaxy. There, the atmosphere was calm, almost serene. Humans lived sustainably, using technology to enhance life without dominating it. Crops grew in perfect balance with nature. Children played safely in open fields without fear of alien conflicts. Communities shared knowledge freely, not seeking profit or power. This was what humans wanted: a life defined by purpose, not by constant interference in a galaxy that often misunderstood them. Yet, even in this quiet, humans remained vigilant. Scouts observed the galaxy from hidden outposts. Sensors monitored distant conflicts, noting which systems were beginning to crumble without human guidance. It was not surveillance for conquest. It was understanding, a way to ensure that one day, if needed, humans could decide how to re-engage, but on their own terms. Back in the Galactic Council, panic quietly began to rise. A mining guild could not extract resources without human logistical guidance. A border dispute between two empires grew tense because humans were no longer there to mediate. Even simple starship routes previously taken for granted became dangerous. Without humans, the galaxy was starting to feel unstable. Among the delegates, some began to whisper, "We did not realize how much we relied on them," said one diplomat from the Zolari Empire, a species known for its strategic cunning. "They were everywhere in ways we never acknowledged." Others nodded. The truth was undeniable. Humanity's contributions were woven into the fabric of galactic civilization, yet it had always gone unnoticed because humans never demanded recognition. Meanwhile, Captain Alex and his team were busy building a new life at the edge of explored space. Colonies were connected by networks humans themselves had developed, powered by sustainable energy sources. The technology was advanced but simple to maintain, designed for longevity rather than spectacle. Humans trained their young not only in science and exploration, but in patience, compassion, and problem-solving, the qualities that had made them the quiet backbone of the galaxy. And yet, there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing the galaxy was beginning to notice. Slowly, subtle reports filtered back through the void. Systems failing, trade interrupted, diplomacy collapsing. Alien leaders who once scoffed at humans now spoke cautiously, almost respectfully. For the first time, the galaxy was beginning to understand the value of humanity. Captain Alex watched a distant star twinkle in the void. He thought of all the times humans had stepped into danger to save others, often without recognition. Wars had ended because of human intervention. Lives had been spared because humans had refused to back down. Colonies had survived because humans had quietly built infrastructure to endure any disaster, and now the galaxy would have to face the consequences of underestimating them. Yet there was no anger in the human hearts. Only quiet resolve. Humanity had given the galaxy its best for centuries. It had guided, protected, and nurtured life across countless systems. And when it had chosen to walk away, it did so not out of spite but out of principle. Humans believed that their absence would teach a lesson more powerful than any argument or weapon could. That some things, some beings are indispensable, even if the universe refuses to notice. As night fell on the colony world, humans gathered not to celebrate departure, but to honor what they had achieved. Children listened to stories of explorers and diplomats, engineers and soldiers, all humans who had quietly shaped the galaxy. The adults spoke in soft tones about balance, wisdom, and the responsibility that came with power. They were leaving, yes, but they were leaving with pride. And somewhere across the galaxy, systems began to falter. The first signs of unrest appeared. Alien leaders glanced nervously at one another, realizing that for all their power they had relied on humans in ways they could not fully measure. It would be some time before they understood fully what they had lost, but humanity was ready. They would watch, they would wait, and when the time came, the galaxy would remember. Not because humans demanded it, but because their absence would make the truth impossible to ignore. The galaxy had been quiet when humans first walked away, but quiet did not last. Within months, cracks began to appear in systems that humans had once quietly maintained. Starports no longer ran on schedule. Trade routes became dangerous as supply ships drifted through unmonitored sectors. Even planets that had been stable for centuries began showing signs of ecological strain. On the surface of the mining world Kael'Rost 4, the Zorvan governor stared at the failing machinery. Automated drills were jamming. Energy conduits overheated. The humans had always maintained the balance, optimizing energy flow and resource management, but now no one knew the right settings. The workers panicked as raw materials piled up, while other vital systems faltered. Kael'Rost 4 had been a shining example of interstellar industry, but without humans, it was quickly becoming a disaster. Meanwhile, in the Andari sector, tensions between two rival alien species, the Andarians and the Vrex, escalated. A dispute over a shared border, which humans had carefully negotiated years ago, suddenly flared into open hostility. Without the human diplomats who had always mediated these conflicts, neither side could find common ground. Minor skirmishes began, and rumors of a wider war spread across neighboring systems. Captain Alex Reynolds watched reports from afar. Humanity had not interfered, but it monitored everything. Humans knew the galaxy was learning a lesson in the most difficult way. Humans had never sought recognition, yet now their absence was loudly felt. Every problem that humans had once quietly solved now spiraled out of control, highlighting just how indispensable they had been. On one remote colony, young children played a game called Galactic Builders. They built miniature starships and settlements from recycled materials, learning about balance and cooperation. Their parents watched proudly, knowing these children were being raised with the very skills that had made humanity respected across the stars. If the galaxy learned anything from this, perhaps it would realize that humans were more than explorers or soldiers. They were teachers and caretakers. Back in the central galactic corridors, the Council was in chaos. Members of the Zalari Empire tried to enforce order with military strength, But their strategies failed without the logistical guidance humans had always provided. Trade guilds threatened strikes as supply chains collapsed. Even scientific research slowed. Because human engineers had been the ones who calibrated many of the delicate instruments that powered interstellar labs. One particularly tense meeting involved representatives from 5 major species. They bickered endlessly, each blaming the others for failures in navigation, trade, and diplomacy. The room was tense, the air thick with frustration. "We underestimated them," admitted one elder from the Trillari species, voice heavy with regret. "They were always here, quietly keeping everything together, and we ignored them." Meanwhile, Captain Alex traveled in the human fleet, visiting the colonies on the outskirts of the galaxy. The humans were thriving in their new solitude. They had chosen planets that were safe, fertile, and self-sufficient. Technology was advanced but intuitive, designed to work without constant maintenance. Life was simple but fulfilling. And yet, even in isolation, humans kept watch. Sensors scanned distant regions, tracking conflicts and system failures. Humans were not abandoning the galaxy. They were teaching it a lesson. On a distant ice planet, a young human scientist named Lila studied a failing alien communication relay. It had once been stabilized by humans to handle massive interstellar traffic. Now, without human oversight, it produced intermittent signals, disrupting entire communication networks. Lila noted the error in her tablet, then smiled faintly. The galaxy would have to learn how important humans had been, one failure at a time. Back on the council, whispers grew louder. "Where are they?" asked one nervous ambassador. "We relied on them for everything, from mining coordination to diplomacy. They were the invisible hand guiding all of our systems." The room fell silent. Alien leaders exchanged glances, realizing the truth. Humans had been the quiet backbone of galactic civilization, and now that backbone was gone. Even in chaos, the humans remained calm. Captain Alex and his crew did not rush to intervene. They allowed the galaxy to struggle, to experience the consequences of neglecting those who had quietly kept everything running. It was a test, but not one born from cruelty. It was a lesson in understanding value, in seeing that some contributions are invisible until they are absent. At one border dispute site, a fleet of wrecked starships clashed with Andarian patrols. The humans observed from a distance. They could have intervened and stopped the fighting within hours, but they chose patience. Every failed negotiation, every skirmish, was proof that humans had always been more than they appeared. Their diplomacy had been subtle, strategic, and effective. Their absence now highlighted that fact in the clearest possible way. Meanwhile, in the trade networks, delays caused ripple effects. Food shortages appeared on a dozen planets. Mining stations went offline. Passenger ships were stranded in dangerous zones. Alien leaders scrambled to organize emergency protocols, but without humans, coordination failed. Slowly, grudging respect for humanity grew, mixed with fear and awe. Humans had never demanded it, yet the galaxy was now forced to acknowledge it. Captain Alex watched the reports from the observation deck of the Aurora. He knew the galaxy would not immediately understand the lesson. It would take time. Patience had always been a human strength, and as humans had quietly maintained life across the stars for centuries, they were now quietly waiting for the galaxy to realize the truth. Humans were not replaceable. On the edge of the galaxy, humans gathered for a ceremony. They honored the civilizations they had served, silently acknowledging the connections that had shaped countless worlds. There were no speeches, no displays of power, only recognition of what had been achieved and what had been given. Humans had always believed in building, teaching, and guiding, not ruling or dominating. Now they let the galaxy experience the consequences of taking that guidance for granted. And slowly, across the stars, reports began to filter in, planets destabilizing, trade networks collapsing, diplomatic tensions rising. The first signs of realization were appearing. Alien leaders who once mocked humans now spoke with caution. They remembered the engineers who optimized their energy grids, the diplomats who prevented wars, and the explorers who had mapped treacherous regions. Humanity's absence was no longer just a mystery, it was a crisis that no one could solve without them. Captain Alex felt a quiet pride. Humanity had never sought glory or control. They had only sought to survive, to explore, and to help, and now, by walking away, they were teaching the galaxy a lesson in humility, respect, and understanding. The humans had given everything quietly, and in return the galaxy would slowly understand what it had lost. The stars glimmered in the distance, silent witnesses to the unfolding story. Humanity remained on the edges, calm and prepared, letting the galaxy confront its mistakes. It was not vengeance. It was not arrogance. It was a simple truth. Value is often invisible until it is gone, and soon the galaxy would have no choice but to recognize the human legacy. The galaxy had reached a breaking point. Systems were failing, trade routes were blocked, and diplomatic tensions threatened to spiral into full-scale war. Every civilization, from the smallest colony to the mightiest empire, felt the absence of humans. Where humans had once quietly guided, solved, and protected, there was now chaos. On the Galactic Council station, a rare silence filled the chamber. Alien delegates stared at each other in disbelief. "We took them for granted," admitted Elder Kale of the Zalari Empire, voice trembling. "We ignored their contributions, and now—" He let his words trail off. No one wanted to finish the thought. Ships were stranded in dangerous sectors. Mining colonies were in disarray. Research stations had shut down. Even the most advanced alien fleets found themselves disorganized and inefficient. The galaxy realized, too late, that humans had not just participated. They had been the foundation of stability. Far at the edge of explored space, humans observed. Captain Alex Reynolds and his crew had built a small network of colonies where life was calm, balanced, and safe. Humans lived in harmony with their worlds, cultivating, learning, and teaching, but their eyes remained on the galaxy they had left behind. Every report of failure, every crisis was a reminder of what humans had quietly done for centuries. The first urgent message reached the human fleet. The Council pleaded for assistance, offering apologies, recognition, even rewards, but humans did not rush back. They understood the lesson needed time to sink in. The galaxy had to feel the absence fully before it would truly understand. Humans had always led not by force but by example. In one troubled sector, two rival fleets, the Vreks and the Andarians, were on the brink of open war. Systems that humans had stabilized were now crumbling under mismanagement. Captain Alex watched from his observation post as fleets maneuvered without coordination, misunderstanding each other's intentions. He felt no fear, only a calm determination. Humans had built tools, systems, and rules that allowed the galaxy to thrive. Now the galaxy would have to learn what happened without them. Alien leaders began to speak differently of humanity. Where there had been dismissal and arrogance, now there was respect, tinged with awe. "They were always the invisible force guiding us," said Ambassador Real of the Trilari species. "And we never realized it until it was gone." Across the stars, civilizations remembered the humans who had engineered energy grids, mediated conflicts, explored uncharted sectors, and saved countless lives. Back on the human colonies, life remained steady. Children played and learned, adults worked and taught. The humans did not interfere directly, but they offered subtle assistance when systems were on the verge of collapse. A stranded research vessel received navigation corrections. A starving colony received food shipments, all without revealing the humans' presence. It was enough to prevent total disaster, but still allowed the galaxy to understand the cost of losing human guidance. In the Central Council chambers, delegates were desperate. They realized that no alien species alone could manage the galaxy with the efficiency and foresight humans had. Systems that had been mundane and reliable now demanded constant attention. Starports became bottlenecks. Trade convoys collided in space. Diplomatic agreements broke down. Humanity had been the silent architect of harmony, and now its absence was a lesson in humility. Captain Alex met with his fellow humans in the quiet of the colonies. "We gave them everything we could," he said softly. "Now they need to understand the value of what they took for granted." The humans nodded, proud not of power but of responsibility. They had protected, guided, and inspired, and now the galaxy would recognize that legacy on its own. Gradually, alien species began sending envoys, not to demand help, but to apologize, to negotiate, and to learn. They asked questions about energy systems, resource management, and conflict resolution. They wanted to understand the methods humans had applied naturally, without fanfare. Every conversation reminded the galaxy of the skills, patience, and intelligence that humans had long taken for granted. Then, in a historic moment, a fleet of alien delegates arrived at the human colonies, not with weapons but with open hands and humility. "We were blind," said Elder Kale. We did not see how much we relied on you. We ask your guidance once more. Captain Alex looked at the approaching ships. He felt the weight of centuries of human effort, of quiet service, of guidance given without reward. The galaxy had finally understood. Humans were not conquerors, not rulers. They were the heart of interstellar cooperation. Their absence had revealed their worth, and so humans returned, but not as servants or underlings. They returned as equals, as respected partners. Alien leaders listened. Trade routes were restored with human coordination. Systems were stabilized. Conflicts were resolved. Humans taught not for power, but to share the skills and wisdom that had quietly maintained galactic stability for centuries. For the first time, humans were fully acknowledged for their contributions. Stories of human explorers, engineers, and diplomats were shared across star systems. Statues and memorials appeared, not to glorify humans, but to remind the galaxy of their essential role. Humanity had walked away, and only then did the galaxy realize what it had lost. Captain Alex stood on the observation deck of the Aurora, looking at the stars. He saw fleets moving efficiently, colonies thriving, and alien species cooperating. The galaxy had learned a powerful lesson. Value is often invisible until it is gone. And humanity, with patience and wisdom, had taught that lesson without ever seeking praise. The humans returned not out of desire, but because the galaxy needed their guidance, and now, it understood that guidance was not a tool to be used, but a gift to be respected. The stars shimmered with possibility, united by the quiet brilliance of humanity. And in that moment, the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humans were not just part of the universe, they were its steady guiding force. The legacy of humanity was no longer hidden. It was written in the survival, prosperity, and unity of the galaxy itself. The lesson was clear. When humans walk away, the universe does not collapse because of power, weapons, or numbers. It collapses because it has lost the wisdom, courage, and ingenuity that only humanity could provide, and the galaxy would never forget it again.